From the Gospel of John. This is, of course, the well-known Jesus' washing of the disciples' feet passage. This is found in John chapter 13, in verses 1 through 17, and then skipping ahead to verse 31 through 35. Please listen for the word of God. Now, before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already decided that Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, would betray Jesus. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from supper, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. And then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had reclined again, he said to them, "Do you not know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you should also do as I have done. Very truly, I tell you, slaves are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." When he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give to you a new commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also should love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." This is the gospel of the Lord. A friend of mine, also a minister, once asked me if I had ever done a foot washing service. The way she describes it, the look of horror that came across my face when she asked me that question, made it appear as though I had just witnessed a crime. I hate feet. I say this every year that I have to preach about this foot washing stuff. In fact, I avoid it at all costs. I don't even like to talk about this stuff. Feet gross me out in a way that is absolutely irrational. I'm not going to lie to you. And so when it comes to Maundy Thursday, I have a tendency to lean more into the Gethsemane side of things, or just to focus on the communion-y side of things, right? But tonight I'm not going to do that. Tonight we're going to deal with feet. Because feet aside, the reality is Maundy Thursday is actually my favorite service of the entire Christian year. I happen to think it is one of the most powerful services outside of the actual high holy days themselves. This is an incredible scene that we are witnessing in this moment as we read through this gospel. There is, of course, the beautiful moments, right? The moments of the foot washing and Jesus offering communion in other stories, right? And the sort of new commandment language, love others as I have loved you. And that's great. But there's also reminders that are sort of scattered within this text that everything is not okay. That inside the room, the devil has already made his voice known too. That the betrayer is also in the room. The one who will literally give Jesus up to be arrested and destroyed, or at least they'll try to. That is what we call complexity. That is the complexity of what it means to be human in this world. This is Jesus acting in our complexity, in this weird moment where there is both this gathering darkness and this incredible hope existing all at the same time. And we all know very well that not everybody in that room is on Team Jesus. In fact, one of them quite famously is on Team Judas, willing to sell his faith. But it would seem that Jesus washed his feet too. And it would seem that if you're reading the communion story, Jesus fed him communion too. Not, by the way, because Jesus didn't know what was going on. This is not a mystery movie. There's no crescendo of music as the suspense builds and Jesus suddenly realizes that he's washing the feet of the betrayer. He knew it. And he did it anyway. That is a level of love that is frankly divine and off-putting for the rest of us. Imagine being asked to kneel at the feet of the one who will betray you or try to destroy you and wash the feet. Offer grace and hospitality and love to the person who is your greatest threat in that moment. Friends, that is a kind of humility that most human beings, in fact, I would wager all human beings, cannot possibly fully understand. That level of service is sometimes beyond us, and that is why these moments are so important. Because humility in the eyes of Jesus is not about who is better or who is worse, who is good or who is bad. It is about what it means to live in right relationship with your fellow human beings or with your God. It's not about the wretched versus the elevated or the low versus the high. It's about what it means to live in a state of righteousness, not just with God, but with each other. Because what does righteousness mean? Right relationship. Welcoming and forgiving one another into this holy space. Welcoming and loving and offering grace to one another at levels that frankly confuse the world around us. Even Jesus, the Messiah, will not place himself or his status above the work he was sent here to do. He was willing to kneel down and wash those feet because that is what needed to be done in that moment. Jesus is teaching us that everybody has to be willing to serve everybody. That is how community works. That is how equity works. Everybody looking out for everybody else. And so it turns out that in my horror about feet are not even the point. It's what they represent in this moment. And this year something occurred to me, something new about what they represent occurred to me, because I started thinking, what does it mean to be an ancient person? What do their feet look like? I know, I went real dark, right? Because in the ancient world, guess what? Not a lot of people were wearing like super covering shoes, right? Their feet were dirty. They were also their primary mode of transportation for the most part. So the feet represented kind of the journey, right? The movement, the being in the world and moving around the world. And they got dirty as people moved around in that world. And they picked up dirt and dust as people walked around in this world. And so the feet pick up all the stuff. And Jesus makes this very practical point, right? If the rest of you is clean, you just have to wash your feet. Because chances are they're dirty. Because they pick stuff up as you're moving through the world. And so each time we wash them, and Jesus, in this very symbolic and beautiful way, as he washes them, begins the process of washing off the baggage of the journey, the things that we drag with us, the things that make our feet a little dirty. Jesus washing off the dust and the debris of wherever we have been, of whatever we have done, and liberating us from the weight and the dirt of those things. Telling us that we can now move forward. We can now start a new journey because the old journey has been washed away. And the first response of the disciple, because they are not always the brightest bulbs in the world, the first response of the disciples was to say no. Not my feet, Jesus. Now, as one who would have trouble letting Jesus touch his feet, but the point here was they were so obsessed, right, with the idea that Jesus had status, that there was some kind of hierarchy even in this room, right? Even in this moment where Jesus is trying to offer them this deep humility, this humble service, they're still thinking about this idea that they have to look super holy by being the most humble. And in order to be the most humble, they become the most arrogant because they forget that their feet are dirty too, that Jesus does need to clean your feet. And you do need somebody at Jesus' level to do it because he's the only one who can. Because when we meet Jesus at the basin to have our feet washed, we drag with us all the stuff, the sins we cannot forgive ourselves for, the mistakes we cannot forget, the slights that we refuse to let go, the grudges that we hold for far too long. And Jesus says, what if all of that stuff isn't the point? What if that is not why we are here? What if the point is actually our willingness, our deep willingness to believe that love is real, that we can trust God, and that faithfulness will guide us through even this dark moment? Maybe the point is to wash your feet and to keep moving. Because friends, you can learn all kinds of stuff from your past and your history and the dust on your feet, but you don't have to let it beat you up every single moment of every single day, and you don't have to let it eat you alive. You can let it go. Let Jesus wash it. Let it go. Let it settle at the bottom of the basin, never to be your problem again. Maundy Thursday matters. It matters deeply because on the eve of his death, with betrayal in the room, with Satan whispering in the ears of his disciples, Jesus did 3 powerful, primary, and important things on this one night. And I'm going to smash all the stories together, because that's what I do. Number 1, he gave us communion. Jesus established this idea of communion, this idea that we are living in connection and community with one another, gathered around this table to be given life by that very connection to God and to each other. The open table, the open community, the place where all are welcome. This was Jesus establishing sacred and holy community around himself. Number 2, he denounced violence. If you read the story of the Garden of Gethsemane, my favorite story personally, he says the famous words, "Enough of this." He says them in response to an act of violence. There will be no more violence. Number 3, he washed the feet. He washed the feet, washed away all of the stuff, washed away all of the dirt and the debris of the world that had come before, washed it away and commissioned a new world, a new way forward, built on the idea that love and service, humility and peace, nonviolence and hope are the things that will propel us into the future, are the things that will keep the dust off our feet, are the things that will keep us moving. And so, yes, friends, this is a pretty important night. Amen.